Oh, right. Erasmus and Turing, Turing and Erasmus. How is it stacking up? How is it looking at the moment? Because Boris Johnson said in Parliament explicitly that there was no threat whatsoever to the Erasmus scheme. And then, surprise, surprise, in the negotiations, it's fallen out. Boris Johnson breaks a promise and at the podium mumbles off something off the cuff about a new scheme called the Turing scheme, and it looks like details about that are being hurriedly put together and rushed out. But at first pass, the excuses being given and the numbers being given don't really seem to add up, do they? So let's go through it. Firstly, when Boris Johnson was challenged about why drop Erasmus, he said that it was too expensive. And also an official from 10 Downing Street said that it would have cost the UK hundreds of millions. So now we've been presented with this new Turing scheme that apparently will send people, students right around the globe, and the cost of it is 100 million. So we're going from hundreds of millions expenditure to 100 million. Okay. Now, the Erasmus scheme sent about 17,000 UK students to, well, not just the EU, but, continental Europe and a bit wider. It's an expanding scheme. 17,000. The Turing scheme plans to send out 35,000 UK students around the world. Okay. And the Turing scheme is sending them not just to the continent, but right around the world. Let's say Harvard, let's say Shanghai, let's say Australia. Okay. And furthermore, if you see a piece in The Spectator today by the Conservative MP David Johnson, apparently a big problem with Erasmus was, according to some old data that he can gather together, a slight shift towards the well-to-do middle classes versus working class students. So apparently the Turing scheme is going to address this. So I presume that they've got more money to help more of the disadvantaged working class students. Right. So what we've got here is, for a fraction of the cost of Erasmus, we're going to send double the number of students to more expensive, faraway places, giving more money to help them out, and also with no cost sharing with any other countries, because we don't believe at this stage any other countries have bought into this scheme. Unlike Erasmus, where you put into a pot and it covers your share of the comings and goings of students, there doesn't seem to be any of this here. So unilateral cost for us to send our students out. In 2014, when the Swiss temporarily were kicked out of the Erasmus program, they wanted it so badly that they decided to make a replica themselves for the gap and pay double, i.e. pay the students outgoing and the students incoming. So I think that the only possible cost savings here, apart from some of the minor vocational and educational training which Erasmus covers, is actually that the UK government does not want to pay for the 31 to 32,000 EU students coming to the UK that the Erasmus student has paid for, because we've been a popular importer of students more than we've sent out. But if you cut that out and you say we don't want the French and German and Portuguese students coming into our universities in their many thousands, well, this is extremely valuable for those universities, not just on a cultural level, but also on an economic level. When you take in those extra students that are paying their rents, their costs, their food, as well as all the establishing of networks. So I think that's getting cut out, but you're going to have to compensate universities for this, because also if these students, if you've got students less eligible to come across on other schemes, this is going to hit our middle tier of UK universities really damn hard. Okay, so that's where I think they're making the savings, but still after that, the costs don't add up, do they? Because get a calculator, any calculator, 100 million divided by 35,000 students. What do you get? You get £2,857. 2,857 pounds. 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 2,857 poun That's no great shakes, is it, per student per annum? And basically, let us think about how that's going to fund them to go and be in Harvard, in Melbourne, in Shanghai, or Beijing, or wherever you want to be sending them. How much travel costs are you going to cover? Let's compare this with Erasmus, where you have a monthly grant of 300 to 350 euros, right? Meaning 3,600 to 4,200 per annum. And this can get topped up by an extra 120 a month, meaning a total of 5,640. And sometimes there are other costs covered as well. Now that means that you can go a lot more to helping a lot of disadvantaged students cover most of their costs for going elsewhere. Whereas, is this Turing scheme really going to cover it? I'm not sure that that adds up. And then finally, if the students that go on Turing get to start going on Turing in September and beyond, you're going to have to get that all together in place to then suddenly launch then thousands and thousands of students going off on an untested scheme, and you've already ended Erasmus now at the end of this transition period, and you've got a whole gap before a new untested scheme starts firing up, probably on weak cylinders at first, because the framework isn't there. It hasn't been built up sensibly over time. It reminds me, I remember during the Iraq War, when the forces went in and the British and Americans basically decided to disband the whole Iraqi army. I think it was the Ba'athist Party's army. They just decided to get rid of it wholesale, and then they thought they'd build a new one. But between not having an army at all and trying to scramble together a new one, which they did badly, there was all kinds of chaos kicking off. And it made me think from that time onwards, whenever you switch systems from one system to another system, keep this one running and add in a new one and see if it works. And if it does work and it can replace this one, then you can retire this one. The idea that we wouldn't keep going on Erasmus, which has been shown to really work well for the disadvantaged, unlike what that Tory MP was saying, there was a House of Lords investigation into this, saying that if you drop it, it will hit the disadvantaged and disabled students disproportionately. Okay, why drop that? Why not test a new thing and see if they can be complementary? Or then if this one's better, switch across to it. Or if it doesn't work, drop it. You're just having this whole chaotic transfer now with big gaps, and there's been no public consultation on it. No votes in Parliament on it. It is just this government screwing up youth opportunity for their own political fantasies. Our youths, this generation going through now, are getting it badly for this government just pursuing their undemocratic, fanciful notions about a new program that they think they can put together, but after the complete mismanagement of this year on so many other programs that they've tried to launch, do you trust them? Because I don't.